Hello, my name is Konstantin, I am Ukrainian, and in this long video I'm going to provide you an update on what's going on in Ukraine right now and also answer a few common questions or statements that I hear towards me from different people from all around the world. Even though right now I do not live in Ukraine, I still have family members, friends and just contacts who are staying in Ukraine. Some of them just living there, some of them are doing volunteering job and helping militaries, and some of them are fighting at the front lines. I also investigate Ukrainian media resources, Western media resources, and Russian media resources. Nevertheless, it doesn't mean that my analysis is 100% correct, it also doesn't mean that my information is 100% correct, and of course it doesn't mean that I have all possible information at my disposal. Nevertheless, this is how I see the situation right now, and this is my current analysis. First of all, I would like to express huge appreciation for everyone who is supporting Ukraine and for every country which is accepting Ukrainian refugees, especially Poland, Slovakia, Baltic countries, Slovenia, Romania, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and other countries which are accepting Ukrainian refugees. Much to my shame, many Ukrainian refugees are behaving like disgusting pigs. It is sad reality, it is not that many of them compared to the number of the refugees, but the diligent refugees are just hiding somewhere, trying to work and earn money, while the disgusting ones are visible everywhere. Again, I'm very thankful for everyone who is donating for Ukrainian needs. I'm very thankful for everyone who is texting me every now and then and asking how are you. I'm very thankful for everyone who is sheltering Ukrainian refugees, helping them with food, clothing, electronics, and any other necessities. Without people like you, it would not be possible to fight Russian aggression. Now let's focus on what's going on the Ukrainian front lines. As you probably know, Russia has withdrawn from some of the Ukrainian regions and decided to push on the eastern regions of Donbas, where we have Donetsk and Lugansk cities. In the first days of the war, Russians were expecting to quickly capture entire Ukraine and just get it done. It didn't work out, and right now they are changing strategy. They are using excessive amount of firepower to level everything up. They have lots and lots of tanks, lots and lots of artillery, and their tactics right now is just level up everything they have ahead and slowly move on with their forces. We have trenches, we have defense lines, but it doesn't really help when Russians have much more or many more firepower to just level everything up and move forward. Sooner or later, Ukrainian forces with huge losses are supposed to withdraw from the positions, and then Russians are entering the freed positions. This happens on empty places, this happens in cities. For example, we can take a look at the city Severodonetsk, which is right now being completely destroyed by Russians, just like city Mariupol, and Ukrainian forces are forced to withdraw because it makes no sense to keep the city that is completely destroyed. Yes, Ukraine is getting artillery from Western countries, but we are still severely outnumbered. For one artillery gun or for one Ukrainian tank, Russians are answering with 10 or 15 artillery guns and tanks. Western artillery has a longer range and higher accuracy. That's why Ukrainian troops every now and then are able to pull out a tactical victory here and there. Still, it is not enough to be able to stop Russian advances, especially if we keep in mind that Russians are using all sorts of prohibited ammo. For example, I have seen videos where Russians are pouring out phosphorus rain on top of Ukrainian trenches. Usage of phosphorus bombs is banned all across the world. Still, Russians are using it. It is extremely dangerous substance and it can kill you once you're already back from the war. If it enters your body, you simply slowly dissolve and die from bleeding. It is very painful, very disgusting and very horrible. Russians are also using cassette bombs, which are also banned all across the world. These bombs are splitting into many small bombs and then exploding in many different locations to be able to kill as many people as possible. As you can see, with such a massive firepower and with usage of these disgusting bombs, Russians can keep advancing for very long. It is slow, but it is very steady. That's why Ukraine needs more long-range artillery, more night vision goggles, more drones to be able to correct artillery fire, and more of all of this again and again. Otherwise, it is next to impossible to stop this invasion. At the same time, when we have this disastrous invasion, I have to admit that unfortunately many of the Ukrainian politicians are bought by Russians, or at least they were bought by Russians before the war. Once the war has started and people started to resist and hold the ground, many of them are quickly changing side. Many of them are trying to sit on both chairs and see who is going to win this war and side with the winner, and some of them are openly working with Russians and helping them destroy Ukraine and kill Ukrainian population. This is a very sad truth, but it is what it is. I also feel ashamed when I see that Ukrainian politicians are trying to blame the West or United States for taking so much time to supply the weapon, for supplying too little weapon, or for something else. Because for the last few years, everything they have done was against Ukraine. They have cancelled multiple military programs and cut down financing of many projects which would help Ukraine a lot in this war. They have also removed explosives from some strategic bridges which would stop Russian advance if they would be blown up. Because the bridges were not destroyed, Russian troops were able to quickly cross into Kherson region, which is right next to Crimea, and after Kherson they were able to proceed to Mariupol, siege Mariupol, and we all know what has happened in Mariupol. Complete disaster, the city is completely destroyed, more than 20,000 of civilians are dead there, and we still don't know what has happened to the garnison which was defending Mariupol to the very last date and eventually surrendered to Russians. All in all, Ukraine is still able to hold, even though Russians were able to capture some extra territory at the eastern part of Ukraine. We are also suffering lots and lots of casualties, and our civilian objects deep inside Ukraine are constantly bombed and rocketed by Russians. In scope of this, I am very happy to see that Germany and France are finally starting to take some serious actions instead of expressing deep concerns. Okay, now let me try to answer a few of the most common questions and a few of the most common statements that I hear from different people. One of the most common questions is where I have been during these 8 years when Ukraine was shelling Donbas prior to Russian invasion. First of all, I would like to ask what kind of permissions or what kind of rights you have to ask this question. Have you told me where have you been when Russia annexed Crimea? Or maybe you can tell me where you have been when Russia interfered in Georgia and captured a few pieces of Georgia. Or maybe you can tell me where you have been when Russia invaded Moldova and captured a piece of Moldova. Or maybe you can tell me where you have been when Russia terrorized Syria and caused lots and lots of Syrian refugees in Europe. I don't think you have right to ask this question if you have been sitting on your chair and enjoying your food while Russia been doing that. And yes, you don't know what I have been doing that, and I'm not obliged to tell you what I have been doing during these 8 years. Then I can proceed with the fact that Ukraine did not shell Donbas for 8 years, because it is a shameless lie. You can simply compare the so-called 8 years shelled Donetsk city against Mariupol city, which has been destroyed by Russians in just a few months. In 2014, Russia has annexed Crimea and entered eastern regions of Ukraine. Ukrainian forces had to respond, but because Russians are using disgusting tactics of locating and basing their troops in civilian places such as schools, universities, hospitals, and city administrations, Ukrainian forces had to drop some bombs and send some shells into these places. And yes, in a few cases there were civilian casualties. This is nothing compared to what Russia is doing, and no one is saying why Ukraine had to do that, because Russian tanks and Russian militaries were standing there. If they would not be thrown away from there, we would have Mariupol in 2014. It is also known and established that Russian terrorists together with Ukrainian traitors were shelling Donbas to be able to blame Ukraine for the genocide of Donbas population. There is a very good video in Russian that explains it all. If you understand Russian language, then follow the link in the video description and you will find it. If you do not understand Russian but still would like to watch the video, then I will try to dedicate some time and translate it into English, so wider audience will be able to understand what has happened in Ukraine in 2014, when Russia tried to annex not only Crimea but also 2 Ukrainian eastern regions. Another very common statement is that NATO and especially the USA are responsible for this war because somehow, somewhen, somewhere they promised Putin that NATO is not going to expand to the east. It is also a shameless lie. So far, I have not seen any signed document which would be provided as a proof that NATO has ever promised this to Russia. And even if there would be such a document, Ukraine is a free, independent country, and we are free to decide when and where we would like to go. NATO is an alliance, and we are free to join it without asking Russian permission. It's also important to add that before Ukraine, Russia has terrorized Moldova, Chechnya, Georgia, and of course Syria. Do you also think that all of these terroristic activities of Russia are responsibility of NATO and the USA? No, I don't think so. Moldova did not try to join NATO, and Syria did not try to join NATO either. Also, how about Sweden and Finland? These two countries are now trying to join NATO, and the geographical location is way much more threatful to Russia than Ukraine. Still, Russia is not doing anything. They are just saying that they do not have any disputes with Sweden and Finland, that's why it's okay. As you can see, it has nothing to do with the NATO expansion. It is just pure Russian imperialistic aggression towards Ukraine just because they want it to be so. Very often people complain that I compare modern Russia with the German Nazis and say that I can't do that because German Nazis were much worse than Russians. Well, yes, I can do that. Let me bring you some facts. Russians have already killed more civilians in Ukrainian Mariupol than the city has lost during entire World War II. On the captured territories of Donetsk, Lugansk region as well as Mariupol city, Russians have established filtration camps. This is just as horrible as what German Nazis did. Russians are stealing and deporting Ukrainian population far north into Siberia and forcing them to live and work there. This is exactly what Nazis did in Ukraine when they needed workforce. Just like Germans did, Russians are stealing Ukrainian grain and trying to cause global famine by blocking Ukrainian harbor so Ukraine is not able to export grain to African and Asian countries. And finally, Russia has officially declared genocide of Ukrainian population through their propaganda media. If you're interested to read this article, then again the link will be provided in the video description. Many people believe that this is Putin's war and I'm not allowed to blame entire Russia for this disaster. My answer is that yes, I can blame entire Russia for this disaster because everyone is responsible. Once again, let me bring you some facts from the history. It all started with Peter I, the beloved Russian Tsar, which is right now a model for Vladimir Putin. Back then there were no Russia, there were no Russian Empire. There was a Moscow municipality which was governed by Peter I. Just like Putin today, back then Peter I had the same dream of a great Russian Empire. But to get the Russian Empire done, they had to capture Ukraine. While capturing Ukraine, they have completely wiped out Ukrainian capital city. That time it was a city called Baturin. The city had population of 20,000 men. It was civilian population as well as militaries. Entire city was burned down and everyone was killed. Civilians, militaries, males, females and children were ruthlessly killed because just a pure existence of Ukraine as a nation and as a separate state was a threat to the goal of establishing Great Russian Empire. The corpses of dead Ukrainians were then dropped into the river so they reach other cities down the stream and threaten and horrify people in those cities, so the cities obey and listen to the Russian Tsar instead of trying to build up their own independent country. If you're interested to read about this strategy and get to know a bit more, then once again the link will be provided in the video description. After this bloody capture of Ukraine, Peter I renamed Moscow municipality into the Great Russian Empire. So, as you can see, this is a self-named empire which has established on Ukrainian land and tried to capture Ukrainians as well as Ukrainian history from the lone state called Kyiv Rus. When the Russian Empire finally fell apart, Ukrainians wanted to establish their own country yet again. But of course, Soviet Bolsheviks didn't want that. There were multiple bloody battles and eventually Bolsheviks gained control over Ukraine. In 1932-1933 they have caused the Great Famine, which is called Holodomor. They literally came to Ukrainian cities, Ukrainian villages, Ukrainian villagers and stole their food, their grain. This caused Great Famine and Ukraine lost at least 7 million men. In 1939, the Soviet Union allied with the Third Reigh and together attacked Poland. Later on they have also attacked Finland, but later on, as we all know, Germans decided to fight with the Soviets and Soviets had to retreat through Ukraine back to Moscow. During this retreat, they have caused more destruction to Ukrainians and Ukrainian land than during entire occupation of Ukraine by Germans. When Soviet Union also fell apart, Ukraine has finally declared its independence. Moreover, Ukraine on its own will decided to get rid of nuclear power as well as lots of other rockets. All of these went to Russia on a condition that Russia is responsible to protect and defend Ukraine, respect Ukrainian sovereignty as well as Ukrainian international borders. At the same time, Russia has declared itself to be Russian Federation and successor of the USSR. Somehow they have inherited or declared to inherit everything good from the USSR, but do not take any responsibilities from the USSR. For example, United Nations never accepted and never voted to accept Russia into the organization. Russia just declared itself to be successor of the USSR, that's why they want to have a permanent seat in United Nations. At the same time, Russia has never paid any contributions to Poland or Finland for the USSR invasion. They also did not provide any compensation to Ukraine for the 1932-1933 famine. As soon as Russian Federation was established, they have started their terroristic activities. It all started with the two Chechnya wars and occupation of Moldova. Later on we have got occupied Georgia, Ukraine and of course Syria. Thus, it is safe to say that Russian Federation is a self-declared terroristic organization which is claiming to be a USSR successor but does not want to accept or pay any USSR debts. And with this, I can safely say that anyone who is identifying themselves as Russian are signing up under all of these terroristic activities and is responsible for it. It's also very important to understand that definition of Russian has nothing to do with your birthplace or with your ethnical roots. For example, the great national leader Joseph Stalin, he was Georgian. And if we take a look at today's Russian propagandists or Russian activists, such as disgusting propagandist Margarita Simonyan, she is Armenian. Another disgusting Russian propagandist Vladimir Solovyov, he is a Jew. Or Putin's best buddy Ramzan Kadyrov, he is Chechen. Yet all of them are identifying themselves as Russian. Thus, Russian identity has nothing to do with the birthplace or the ethnical roots. Russian identity identifies evil imperialistic ambitions to terrorize and capture neighboring countries. There are still a few things that I need to mention before I finish this video. Putin did not order to destroy Ukrainian cities. Putin did not order to rob Ukrainian cities. Putin did not order to rape Ukrainian women and children. This is all done by simple Russian soldiers. This is done in every captured place, and this is very, very popular in Russia. Russian relatives are gladly supporting the soldiers who are doing horrific things in Ukraine. If you ask any Russian official if they are aware of this, they will just say that it's a fake. So as you can see, they don't even want to be part of it. Yet Russian population is doing it and Russian population is supporting it. I have contacts with several different volunteer groups which are trying to help people in the destroyed cities. These people are sharing horrible stories with me. I am going to tell you just a few so you understand what is really going on. For example, they have found Russian Viagra in a destroyed Ukrainian kindergarten. What kind of a human you're supposed to be to take a gun, go to a neighboring country, kill civilians, and rape children, and for that you're taking Viagra with you from your country into the neighbor country. I simply can't understand this, and I hope you cannot understand and accept this as well. All the civilians from these destroyed cities say that Russians were simply killing and torturing everyone they didn't like. Sometimes they were killing and torturing just because they wanted to. In some cases, they find piles of dead dogs and cats, simply because Russians didn't like dogs and cats running around. Another civilian told a story how they blow up a cellar where people were hiding from them. They come to a cellar, knock the door and say, "Hey, we brought you some food." When people open the door, they throw in a hand grenade. And of course, women and children which were hiding in the cellar all died. This is just a fraction of what I know and what I have heard from volunteers which are trying to help in those destroyed Ukrainian cities. The last thing I would like to mention is that I lived in Russia for more than a year and I have also worked for Russian customers for more than 5 years. And as you can imagine, I have lots of contacts in Russia. Yet, when Russian invasion has started, only one person texted me and said that he is not supporting this terrorism and he asked me how he can help in this situation. Nobody else texted me with apologies, with offer to help. They are all just silent, they don't want to contact me ever again. Actually, I'm wrong here. One of my previous customers, who is a very intelligent person, at least very smart person, who has been to Europe multiple times, he decided to convince me that I'm staying under Western propaganda, that I'm still young and I have time to understand that Great Russia is coming to Ukraine to free us from the evil Western Nazis. Firstly, I could not believe it because the person is really smart and intelligent and is supposed to know what is going on. Finally, I had to just accept that the person knows what's going on and the person supports it. I still have lots of information to share, but this video is already very long and I have to stop somewhere. If you're still with me, then thank you for watching and I appreciate your attention. I wish you to never experience what Ukraine has to experience right now and see you in the next video.